relatively small. His word was his bond. He was able to stand up to interest groups who had supported him if he thought they were wrong, and he did it time after time. And you couldn't fool him because he had been in the system for 20 years. He was a LAPD officer for 20 years. He knew the civil service system. When he said we can't afford more than a 3% pay raise, he meant it. And when he said it, you know you could go to the bank with it. It's not the same, and I'm not making reference to any particular mayor that followed him, or any other politician, but there are a handful of elected officials who, when they tell you they're going to do something, you can go to the bank with it. One of them was Tom Bradley, one of them was Dianne Feinstein. And they are rare breeds in this business. So I feel, you know, I think he's one of the great political figures in my lifetime in the city. I'll tell you a quick story if I can. In 1976, Jimmy Carter is running for president. Walter Mondale is the vice presidential candidate. Mondale is coming for a campaign stop at the Beverly Fairfax Senior Citizen Center, which is like ground zero for my political base. The campaign did not want to let me sit. They had every other elected official in the neighborhood sitting on the platform. For whatever reason, they decided not to let me sit on the dais, on the platform. When Tom Bradley heard about it, he said to the Carter people, if Yaroslavsky is sitting in the audience, that's where I'm going to be sitting. I didn't ask him to do that. He had heard about it, and he did that on his own. And I could give you a bunch of other examples, but that's about as good as it gets. He was a good man, and was a pivotal figure in this city at a pivotal time. And I really have a very high regard for him, despite the fact that I think between 1987 and 89, or even between 85 and 89, he had kind of lost his way. But he found it, he refound it, and rehabilitated himself politically, which is why I didn't run. I don't think he was beatable at that moment that the decision had to be made.
So we've got a couple of video stories we want to show you from 1987. We're going to run the two now. We're going to save Occidental, but we're going to run the two stories that relate in some ways to what you're talking about. These were about issues during that time, and your role with it, and the mayor.
Since I have been in public office, and it has never been a matter, was it my prestige online, simply expressed my support for a candidate. Some of those candidates have won, some have lost, just as they have in this election.
But this election has changed some things. Pat Russell has used the presidency of the city council to help Bradley's programs, and now she'll be gone. What will the mayor do without a quarterback in the council?
I propose my own initiatives. I propose my programs. I don't look to some member of the council to quarterback them or to carry them.
Russell shared Bradley's vision of Los Angeles and how it ought to develop. And today the mayor says that has not changed.
Los Angeles is a world-class city. It is going to continue to grow. It will become the magnet that attracts investments and business to this city.
But other powerful people are challenging that vision of Los Angeles as a continuing boomtown. Yaroslavsky is widely expected to challenge the mayor himself.
There's a growing coalition of people who are now beginning to address issues of livability, that the growth and the world-class city that we all want Los Angeles to be doesn't have to involve simultaneously the undermining of a quality of life.
Ruth persuaded Pat Russell by vowing to stem the tide of development. There is disagreement now over whether Bradley's expansive vision was repudiated at the same time.
Absolutely, a ridiculous notion.
The challenge that we face is to create a city which has both the economic vitality and a livability to it that has been ignored by the policies of the city for some time.
And the direction is very different from what the city's been doing under the mayor, and this is that to some extent the political significance.
I think it's at variance with the direction in which the mayor and his planning commission have gone. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
They still look the same.
On the perimeter.
There will be an increase in the number of police officers walking the streets of Los Angeles, and there won't be a need for that controversial tax on residents of South Central LA who have financed extra police protection for their neighborhood. All that discussed the city council today, and your committee has made a budget recommendation aimed at strengthening the LAPD.
Your committee is recommending an increase of 250 in the sworn strength of the Los Angeles Police Department. Your committee is also recommending an increase in overtime by $2.5 million.
Chief Darrell Gates justified the expenditures.
Making well over 220,000 arrests today. Then we were making 180,000 arrests back again in 1972.
After the officers are hired, the proposal calls for them to be spread throughout the city, an especially heated issue in South Central LA. But the crime problem was so bad that Councilman Robert Farrell proposed having residents in his district pay an extra tax to finance more police patrols. Even though today's council vote negates the need for the controversial Proposition 7, the backlash against Farrell by constituents upset with the idea may be severe.
So you don't think this is going to hurt you politically, huh?
Well, it already has. I'm paying that price for it.
Today's vote was also a political victory for Councilman Yaroslavsky, whose finance committee came up with the money for more police, while Mayor Bradley's proposed budget did not. Yaroslavsky is widely believed to be gearing up for a challenge to Bradley in the next mayor's election. From City Hall in Los Angeles, I'm Jose Sanders, Channel 2 News.
So I think one of the questions raised by these two reports, and you did address it in some respects with your comments about Bradley, but in a larger sense, I think a lot of people, everybody thought you were going to run for mayor. Why not? Why didn't it happen?
Well, I mentioned a second ago, let me just tell you why I was thinking of running for mayor, because as you now can look back at my 40 years, you know I wasn't all that ambitious to just hop from job to job and work my way up. I had become frustrated, if not angry, as Marvin Brownie, my colleague, who you all remember, who represented Encino, Tarzana, and Palisades and Brentwood. Our two districts were ground zero for the overdevelopment epidemic that took place here in the 1980s. And I don't, as I said in one of those interviews, I don't have a problem with people building. They just got to build in a way that doesn't hurt other people. When you give somebody a zone change, with the stroke of the pen, you increase the value of their property. And if they're building a building like the Fujita building on Ventura Boulevard was in Encino, right across from Valley Beth Shalom, and they built this big, great wall, a 5-6-story tall building that cast a permanent shadow on all the homes to the north of that, on the north side of that building. With one stroke of the pen, the Fujita building made a killing, and all the people who lived in their shadow lost the value of their home. And in fact, what happened was the temple bought all the homes and turned it into a parking lot. And that became the poster child among other buildings in this town. But that one in particular was egregious because it symbolized everything that was wrong about what the city was doing, and Tom was responsible for it along with his planning commission. And it didn't have to be that way. We had a lot of battles here in Sherman Oaks, same thing, the Ventura Boulevard specific plan and all the battles that we had there. On the other side of the hill, the Wilshire corridor was a mess that I inherited and couldn't straighten out because the city council at the time, and at one point in time, the mayor himself were enabling these developments to go ahead and were preventing any reform that would allow it. So after the Fujita building went up in 85, roughly 1985, I went down to see Marvin Brownie in his office. And I said, Marvin, we're getting our butts kicked every time. You want to bring a moratorium on high rises on Wilshire Boulevard, you lose 7-7. I try to bring a moratorium on the Wilshire Boulevard part of Westwood, I get beat 7-7. And we needed 10 votes to override the planning commission. I don't know how it works today, but in those days, if the planning commission said approve the development, to stop it, we had, or opposed a moratorium, to override them, we needed 2/3 of the vote of the council, and we were 3 votes short. I said, Marvin, we're going to keep fighting this battle, and there's only so many times you can go to your constituents and say, I'm doing my best, but I can't get it done. So I said, let's do an initiative. And that's where Prop U came in. And Prop U, if those of you remember, cut commercial development in half on all commercial streets in the city that were adjacent to residential neighborhoods, and it passed 65-35. It changed the culture of the place in 1986 for a number of years. Last thing I'll say on this subject, it was Prop U that I think sent a warning shot across the Bradley administration bow that if they didn't change the way they were doing business, they were going to get wiped out. And they did change. They at least what they said they changed, but they had no choice to change. Prop U forced it on them. But that was a very tumultuous time, and I know most of you were around then and remember that battle. And it still sticks in my craw when I think of some of those battles that we lost, because developers basically owned a few of our colleagues, enough of our colleagues to stop them, to stop us.
Well, you also had battles, of course, when you were on board of supervisors. And one of those battles was involved with the Orange Line. And Bob Hertzberg was involved in this with you as well, and traveled with you to Brazil, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So Bob, you want to come up and tell the story of what happened with the Orange Line? It was one of the really big battles here in Dallas.
Somebody bring a napkin up here, a couple of napkins, so there's some more.
I get to tell actual history, right, Zev? I just want you to know, it was Zev who taught me how to hug everybody. Come on, Barbara, is that right? Was it 71 or 72 you got married?
71.
Oh, and 71 years now. In August, right?
Yes.
Okay, just that's my
43 years.
43 years. I took the heat on that, okay, Barbara? Hi, everybody. So let me tell you, this is one of the great, crazy stories of how things happen, right? We had a significant transportation issue in the San Fernando Valley. There were all sorts of proposals throughout the year, the idea of double-decking the 101, and the issue when Robbins was in office that limited the ability to have any kind of surface transportation. We had to go underground. It was a hotbed political issue for a number of reasons. So I believe the year was 1998. I get a call from Zev and from Dick Reardon, and they were going to Curitiba, Brazil. Where that is, I now know it's in the state of Paraná in Brazil. And the Polish governor, Jaime Lerner, who became your friend, and the Japanese mayor, right? Japanese mayor in Brazil. We went down there with Yvonne Brathwaite Burke. And Bellman, weren't you on the trip too, Joe? See here? He was on the trip? What's his face? The kid who went, transportation deputy was there. And so we went to Brazil to look at their transportation systems, thinking that they could be something of value. It was just a quick trip. Yeah, it's just a quick trip. And we went to go to Brazil. And I got to tell you, so we did this trip. It was a lot of fun. And this was kind of like the Orange Line. That's where the idea came from. But what happened is you'd step up in these little deals, and then you'd walk directly onto the train, onto the bus. So it was like a train where you didn't have to step up, right? And there were dedicated bus rays. And just one of the other great stories, so after we finished in Curitiba, we went up to Iguazu. If anybody know what Iguazu is, where it's Uruguay, Paraguay, and I guess Brazil and Argentina all come together, 3,500 waterfalls. And we flew, Paraguay? And so we flew up with Jaime Lerner, the governor of Paraná, in this little teeny plane. And we're on the end of the runway, and there's this incredible storm that's out there. And it's lightning, and it's pitch black, and Sam's holding on. And he's having a heart attack, and he turns to me and says, well, the story's going to be if this thing goes down. Dick Reardon and 3 others went down in the plane. So next scene, we're talking about this idea, and it's 9 o'clock in the morning, it's a Sunday morning, it's my wedding anniversary, and the doorbell rings, and who's at the door in his Jeep? He had a Jeep Cherokee, right? At the time. It's Zev. Come on, Hertzberg, let's go look at routes. Just talk about a hands-on guy. Talk about getting stuff done. So we spent a few hours driving the back alleys, driving all around through the places to figure out where we could put a route. okay? And part of that was, when we were on the airplane, Zev sat and pulled a napkin out and actually drew the routes, and this actually, he got back to his office, he took a map, and this is Zev's, with a marker, he made the route for a north-south line and for the east-west line. And it's substantially what it is, and this is what he did. So now, this is the real deal. I mean, this is hands-on, you know, he did it himself and did this. So now, I was Rules Committee Chairman at the time, and I'm becoming Speaker. It's 1999. I walk into the governor's office, and he's doing this big transportation plan. And he says, and they're talking about $265 million for Crenshaw. And of course, being the representative of the San Fernando Valley, I said, where's the $265 million for the valley? And when you're Speaker, the governor says, no problem, we'll put it in, because you affect everything that they do. So this is the true story. So the governor had to go to the bathroom. And so I said, Governor, can I use your phone? So I quickly raced over, grabbed the governor's phone, I called Zev, urgent, get on the line. I said, Zev, I got $265 million, what can I do with it? Right? He goes, well, it's 165 for the east-west line. And he says, put 100 in for the north-south line. Governor comes out of the bathroom, I said, I want 100 for the north-south, 165 for the east-west, and it became the budget, and that's how it got done. And Zev did the homework every day, from driving the lines to doing the stuff, to drawing the pictures, to making it happen. And let me tell you, this wasn't easy. There were communities that were picketing us and giving us a hard time. I lived on Chandler, had a tough time. Zev stuck it out. There were a number of other people in the community that went the other way, and he stuck it out, and he stuck it out, and he stuck it out. And this system now, what, is 3 times the ridership of what was predicted at the time? 5 times. 5 times the ridership. Vez Mila, who would know? 5 times the ridership because of that. I mean, it's just a great story. It's a great story of how he does work, of just, you know, whether, you hear about politicians all the time, and most of them are a bunch of blowhards that take a bunch of credit for stuff that they never did. They make the stuff up. We all know those stories. This is an eyewitness, actual history story of what really happened with Zev Yaroslavsky, and one of the many things he did to make the San Fernando Valley and LA County a better place. Thank you very much.
So, let me tell you the corollary story to this. Along this orange line, one of the communities along the route is the Orthodox Jewish community, the religious Jewish community in the valley. And the biggest Orthodox synagogue in the valley is at Coldwater, just east of Coldwater on Chandler. And the rabbi there, who was a great man, a great learned man, hated this project in the worst way. And he called me and he said, you know, he asked me to come to his office. I did. He said, this is going to be a disaster. It's the worst thing since the slavery in Egypt. You know, I said, it's terrible. I said, why is it so terrible, Rabbi? He said, it's going to divide our community. Half of our parishioners are north of Chandler, half are south of Chandler. The people on the north side will not be able to get to the synagogue on the south side. I said, I'll tell you what we'll do, Rabbi. We'll create a pedestrian crosswalk right in front of your synagogue that'll cross the orange line. He says, but the people crossing will be taking their lives into their hands because the buses will be going 40 miles an hour. And I said, well, Rabbi, I'll put in a pedestrian traffic signal that if all they have to do is push the button and we'll give a red light to the bus and they'll be able to cross to safety. And he says, but on the Sabbath they can't press it. And I said, our Mormon traffic engineer in 1975 invented the sabbatical light, which, true story, that from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday, it activates automatically. So that in the Orthodox neighborhoods, they don't have to activate. And it was checkmate. He didn't like it. Fast forward to several years later when the line was up, the rabbi had retired, and he moved to Jerusalem. He was back here for a dinner. And I said, Rabbi Sugarman, it's great to see you. I hate to bring up a sore subject, but have you had a chance to see the Orange Line in operation? He said, yes, I did. I said, so what do you think? He says, the Orange Line, what's not to like? And that was the advertisement I wanted to put on every bus. What's not to like? Let me tell you, if it wasn't for Bob Hersberg's phone call, we would not have had an orange line, at least not that soon. It was a gift from heaven or at least from Sacramento, that made that happen. I appreciate that very much.
Never heard anybody call Sacramento heaven.
And it's good to learn how things work in Sacramento, right?
I can give you some other stories, but they're not so much fun.
So, this is a tough act to follow, but I think, let's get to the content.
Well,
What better than the quiz, right?
I think we already gave the answers for.
Okay, so early on tonight, you guys filled out forms. Be really honest, how many of you changed answers that you wrote down earlier because you heard the correct answers being talked about already? Okay. I'm going to go through the answers one by one.
Bob, can you keep her quiet?
Be on your best behavior, mark your papers, okay? All right. The first event, chronologically, was Zev orchestrates protest march against the oppressive treatment of Jews in the Soviet Union. Okay? That's number one. 1969. Next came Zev resigning from a $150 a week job to campaign for city council. 1974. Next in his life, as we just heard a little bit about also, Zev began an effort to fight traffic congestion in Los Angeles.
What year?
How's that working out, Zev?
It would have been worse.
Okay, that was 1987. I don't know. You guys seen any improvement in the traffic since, 86? Okay, and you seen any improvement in the traffic yet?
It always improves during recessionary periods, so stay tuned.
Okay. All right, let's see. After that, okay. After being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, that loses 30 pounds and sponsors an ordinance that now requires all fast food chains in LA County to post calorie counts on their menus.
That's actually been trumped now by a state law that Alex Padilla carried that requires this statewide. We were kind of the prod that got the state going, but it's a great thing. So when I found out that a tuna sandwich at the Subway is twice as caloric as a turkey sandwich with a piece of cheese, I couldn't believe it. I thought tuna was good for it. I guess the mayonnaise isn't. So.
I thank you for that one. I like that one. Okay. All right, so let's see. That gets us to the orange line we just heard all about. Okay?
What year?
2005. Is that correct? Okay. All right. Leaves us with, and I want to hear about this one, Zev makes cameo appearance in an opera production.
Yeah.
Want to talk about that one?
Talk about that? Well, I can talk about it a long time, but I'm not going to. It was the opera asked me to be their honoree at their gala opening night this past September, and I agreed. I love the opera. I love the arts, as I think most of you know. They called me 2 weeks before the opening night, and they said, "We want to do something special. You have 1,000 plaques. We don't want to give you a plaque. We'd like to ask you, would you like to conduct the Star Spangled Banner from the orchestra pit?" I said, "Sure, I've done it before. I'd be happy to do it." And they said, "Great. And the second thing we'd like to ask you is whether you would be interested or willing to appear on stage during a part of the second scene of the second act of La Traviata. It's a party scene, gambling, women of the night, all kinds of stuff, ladies of the night. And you won't have to sing, you don't have to do anything, you just have to just follow what the other guys are doing." So I thought about it for a minute, in a moment of weakness, I said, "Yeah, I think I'd like to do it." Make a long story short, I get to the opera, I do this thing, it was great, it was a real blast. The cast was great to me and made me feel right at home. The next 2 days later, there's a review of the performance. In the last paragraph of the performance, Mark Sweat of the LA Times writes as follows: "Supervisor Zev Yaroslavsky, parentheses, a failed oboist," because he knows that I played the oboe and in high school. And he said, "was seen on stage in the second scene of La Traviata. Ever the politician," he said, "Yaroslavsky was seen gambling and carousing." And that was the end of that story. It was a lot of fun. I emailed Elisa Cass, my chief deputy, who you heard from the dress rehearsal. I said, please do not email me about anything to do with the office. I have no interest any longer in any county business. I made a big mistake. I should have gone to Opera Conservatory. I'm having a ball. It was really great. Yeah.
Okay, Susie,
Okay,
how do we determine winners?
Raise your hand if you got all 6 answers correct.
Brad.
Wow, okay. Well, we had a tiebreaker on here, but somebody spilled the beans with the answer. Okay, but maybe they weren't listening. If you have all 6 right, did you also get the bonus question at the bottom? Anybody get all 6 right and the bonus question?
Raise your hand.
Stand up if you did that. How many people? I want to. Okay, so we have 3 people. Now I need another tiebreaker, and I have one. Hold on 1 second. I just don't know the answer.
3 youngest people in the room.
Okay, what is it?
Okay. Can you name Zeb's favorite food?
Wait, you have to knock it down. And with the 3 people that want, please go with Susie and we'll determine the winner and then see Jules for the prize. Sweet.
Okay.
Thank you. And 3, go out there and make sure you have it marked down.
Well, we're out of the room. Zeb can tell him what the answer is.
That's right. The way they come out of the room. Okay.
All right, we've got a couple more stories. We're going to make it quick because I know we've got a lot of stuff to still cover. Wendy Gruhl is here, and Wendy has a funny story.
I don't know how funny they are there. So, just about how great a representative Zeb has been. And if we all aspire to be as good as Zeb has been over the years. And I don't think there is a more active politician throughout that entire, I never saw him slow down. And so these stories relate somewhat to that. One was, I remember when the Orange Line opened and people were having a lot of accidents, and they were blaming the Orange Line. And there was one particular one where I headed out there, I called Zeb on the phone, we were both headed out to the intersection to see exactly where it had happened at like 9 o'clock at night. And this was an instance where someone literally went into the middle of a bus. They were clearly not watching where they were going. And defending the importance of the Orange Line. Zeb talked about Tom Bradley and the closeness there, and I worked for the mayor at the time. And Zeb's offices were on the other side of the mayor's office. And I don't know if you remember, but there was a little bit of, when it was kind of hot and cold, when it was hot, as far as our relationship, we put out tables outside the press office and the mayor's chief of staff's office, and we would sit out there and knock on Zeb's door. This was probably not legal or safe because it was on top of a roof there, but that connection that we had. The last story I want to just tell very quickly, because you have a lot of questions, is about Zeb, and I won't tell you who this politician was, but there was another elected official who was not as approachable or excited about constituent services, and the both of them were sitting at an event, and there was some guy who was really angry about something. And this politician said, oh my God, I hate this part of it, I can't stand it, blah, blah, blah. And Zeb said, that's the best part of the job, and by the end of it, I'm going to make sure that they understand our position and are going to agree with us. And he did. Zeb was always a stand-up guy for the reasons we all talked about tonight. And I just wanted to be here to say, you are a consummate politician in the good sense of the word, and elected official. And congratulations to all of you here. Nice to see you.
Thank you. And finally, the woman who knows all of your secrets, okay, most of them, and has been with you through thick and thin and good and bad. Barbara? And I have to say, in 1985, a newspaper article, they described your home in the Fairfax district as a drab yellow structure with peeling paint and dirt-patched front lawn. The reporter noted that Yaroslavsky was known for frugality in his public and private life, spending much of his spare time following world events in newspapers and television. Is that true, Barbara?
What, that he was following?
He spent all of his time.
Is what true?
He spent all, any of it? All of it? He spent all of his time watching the news?
Zeb is a fanatic when it comes to watching the news. If you need to know what someone said on what channel, on what day, at what, ask him, he'll tell you, and he doesn't forget anything.
We only watch Channel 2.
Oh, there you go.
Or 9, depending on Jake Bryan. So as far as the draft house, I'll tell you, it probably was true. But you know what, at my age, I don't remember so well. It's not so important. Our house is no longer yellow and it's no longer drab. How's that? I would venture to say...
Our lawn is green.
Our lawn is green. I would venture to say for me, and for Zeb, therefore, because it's for me, instead of going to shrink, it's much cheaper to plant flowers and to have grass. You come home and it looks nice and you feel good. So it saves you all the money at the shrink. But we've been married for 43 years, not 42 years. I thought I might have mentioned that.
You knew that was coming.
Well, I got all the other questions right.
That's a good thing. I mean, for someone who is a fanatic when it comes to history and really knows and remembers, we're lucky. I mean, he used to say to me, I told you that, and I believe him for many years. I believed him. Every time he told me he was going to be somewhere or he wasn't going to do something, or he told me already, I really believed he told me. And then my kids started doing it, and then I started realizing, I would have remembered that you were going to tell me that you're going to jump out of an airplane or that you were not going to be home for a week. So it worked for a little while, but then I caught on to that. You know, I had a very rude awakening one year. I was on a board, one of the many boards I serve on, and the rabbi stood up and he said he had this disease. I thought, oh my God, now we're going to have to go through a search for a rabbi. I can't deal with this. He says, I have this syndrome. It's called CRS syndrome. And I thought, CRS syndrome, what does that mean? You can't remember shit, and that's my story all the time. So I know that you've heard probably many things about Zeb and his ability to do whatever he does well. And he's reminded you about traffic. And I know that, I assume that everyone here in this room knows both of our kids were born at Tarzana Medical Center, which is here in the Valley. And our kids both went to Valley schools, Monroe and North Hollywood High School. And for us, I would venture to say the problem with the separation of the Valley and the city started with the AT&T and the 818 versus the 310-213 area code. Had they done it north-south versus east-west, we would have been much better off. But I want you all to remember about traffic, which I try and remember and remind my husband all the time. That without traffic, people have nowhere to go. They have no money to spend, and they probably don't have jobs to get to. So next time you're stuck in traffic, just take a deep breath and realize we're better off for having it, in my opinion, of course. Now, as far as too funny, you don't agree with me.
I guess she's not running for anything.
So I will also suggest that if you listen to the news, you would know that there was an accident on the 101 to the 134 today, and had you take Coanga here, you would have been here in 20 minutes tonight instead of whatever it took you. Okay. So I can remember the time that we were almost thrown out of Chasen's. Do you remember that?
No.
We went to Chasen's. It was somewhere that I had always aspired to go to as a young person. It was somewhere we could never have afforded to go to. And soon after Zeb was elected to the city council, we were there celebrating something, and we were having dinner. And out on the patio in the back, for those of you that remember the restaurant, it was a very nice, very fancy restaurant. There was a patio, and out there was the wife of the Shah of Iran having a party. And out there, I wanted to go say hello to the mayor. I didn't really care about whatever her title was, but I wanted to go say hello to the mayor. The mayor had been in my mom's house in the 50s, and I really felt a kinship, and he had been always very fun, very kind and friendly to us. So I thought, I'm going to go out and say hello to him. So I started to get up from the table and go out and say hello to him, when the guy who was the head waiter, the maitre d', whatever his title was, came over and said that this wasn't going to be tolerated. I couldn't go out there and say hello, but I'm just going to say hello to the mayor. You can't go say hello to the mayor. So I went and sat down. I mean, I was really nervous that the guy was going to toss us out of the restaurant. Tom Bradley saw what was happening, and he came to the restaurant, and he invited us to join his party. Remember that?
Yeah.
So that's true, okay. The other thing is Zeb goes off. See, my memory, I told you, is not so good, but sometimes it's, that long-term memory is okay. Zeb one time went to the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, and he was doing whatever he was doing. I think he was lecturing on how to establish government 101. And somehow he thought he had, every time he goes on a trip, he brings his staff something nice. It's more or less nice. Usually a lot less, it's cheap, yeah, so, you know. Is someone bugging you about being cheap? Oh, good. Every dollar he spends in the county is like coming out of his pocket. Don't worry, he's very careful about how money spent. He doesn't control the checkbook at home now. Okay, so the caviar, so Zev goes and he gets caviar. He gets little jars of caviar. And Zev had, I think, 2 suits maybe in those days. And he packed the caviar in his suitcase. And when it went through customs, they wanted to know what were those little round things, so they knew exactly what it was. And after back and forth, he was allowed to bring the caviar home. Put it in the refrigerator, but unfortunately, 1 or 2 of the jars of caviar had broken in the suitcase. Might I recommend to anyone that's traveling ever and wants to bring home something salty like caviar, make sure you take plastic bags because he ruined his suit. So those are the 2 stories that okay?
Let me tell you about the caviar. I took the 2 suits to Holloway Cleaners, which I think is the best cleaner in the city, in West Hollywood. And after 3 days, the guy from Holloway called me and he says, Mr. Yaroslavsky, he says, we've used 32 of the most powerful cleaning agents that we have at our disposal, and the stains did not come out. If we use the 33rd most powerful, the color of your suit will come out, but we can't guarantee that the caviar will come out. It's a true story. The caviar sold retail at the hotel for $29 a jar. I got it on the black market. Our driver was able to get it for $5 a piece. I said, $5 a piece, 75 bucks. I can bring caviar to every member of my staff. Boy, will I be popular. Well, it ended up costing me several $100s. Plus the $70.
No, he never spent that much.
No, the suit's gone.
No, the suit was 75 bucks.
Yeah, right. It might have been. All right.
Barbara, thank you very much. Great story. Thank you. Okay, so we're running over time now. I've got a couple of quick questions for you, okay?
And we want to thank Barbara. She has to leave. She's now driving down to San Diego for a commission hearing at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So we appreciate your coming and okay.
All right, a lot of discussion over the last few years about the size of the supervisorial districts. Now that you're not going to be involved directly in this, should there be more districts so that there are quite as many millions of people in each district?
Yeah, I don't think, unless you create an elected executive for the county, I do not believe that you should increase the number of supervisors. Because it's bad enough with 5 of us. We are the executive of the county. The mayor is the chief executive of the city. It's my wife. I'm in trouble. In the county, the 5 supervisors are the chief executive. Well, there is no organization, no business model anywhere that has the chief executive divided up among 5 different people. It's a prescription for getting nothing done. Despite that, we try to get a lot done, and we do get a lot done, but it's not the way to do it. So we have 5 now, and it's difficult. Imagine if we had 9. That was one of the proposals that was made. So you have 9 people, 4 more people who get to pontificate about what they want. You have 5 people, you have 5 opinions about what should be done. You end up trying to find the lowest common denominator. And those of you who remember your math, the lowest common denominator is the least precise number. And you get the least precise solution to a problem when you work when you strive to get the lowest common denominator. So I believe that you should have 1 person elected by all the people of the county, who's the CEO of the county, like the mayor of Los Angeles. All the East Coast counties do that. And then it would make sense to increase the number of supervisors or decrease the number of people in each supervisor's district.
So there should be a county executive.
I do believe it. I don't think there's a snowball's chance, and you know what, to get it approved by the voters. Interesting thing about you voters, us voters, we never approved more politicians. When the city council was proposed to have an increase of 2 members from 15 to 17, it was rejected 2 to 1. The Board of Supervisors had that on the ballot 10, 15 years ago, rejected 2 to 1. And when we tried to get rid of an office that was superfluous, at the time, in the mid-70s, the city controller's office, and required that the controller be a CPA, that was defeated 3 to 1. So you don't want more politicians, and you don't want less politicians. So we live with what we got. It's the hand we were dealt. And I was actually, at one time, Dave, I was thinking of proposing a charter amendment in the county, and I said, it'll never pass. I'm not going to go through a quixotic effort and leave it to somebody else.
That question was from Jerry Weinerman. Jerry, can you raise your hand? Thank you. Another question from Barbara Weitzman. Barbara? Okay. Question is about the 405. When will the 405 construction be completed?
You mean the current construction?
Yeah.
It's being wrapped up. So I don't know the exact date, but the things they're doing now is just fine tuning and smoothing out the project is largely done. And let me tell you something. It was a very expensive and a very disruptive project. And I spoke the other night to the Westwood Hills Homeowners Association. Those are the people who live between Veteran Avenue and the 405, just east of the 405. And they probably took the brunt of this, even more than in Sherman Oaks. People's homes were damaged, and the MTA, the contractor, which is Kiewit, which is now trying to lobby the MTA to go into an arbitration, which is going to cost us a fortune. In fact, that's coming up tomorrow at the MTA meeting. They ruined people's patios, they damaged people's homes, and they didn't pay a nickel for it. But having said all of that, there are a lot of good things that came out of that project. Number one, the on and off ramps all along that stretch are significantly improved and lengthened, so that a lot of the traffic that backed up onto the freeway and that backed up onto the surface streets are now contained on the on and off ramps. It has helped the surface street congestion, certainly at Sunset, and Mulholland, and to some extent on this side of the hill. Secondly, we seismically upgraded 3 bridges over the freeway, which is important, and it was going to have to be done at some point. It probably would have been done after a 7.0 earthquake when the bridges collapsed. This way we're able to do it at the same time. And then one of the most dangerous on and off ramp configurations in the country, which was the Wilshire Boulevard 405 on and off ramps, we have totally reconfigured it so that you don't take your life in your hands when you get on and off the freeway. That's a side or an addition to the added lane. And while there have been a lot of anecdotal things about the freeway is not any better off than it is today, the fact is it is better off today, traffic-wise. The congestion does not go as long as it did before, and even tonight, it moved much more smoothly. Now, it won't last forever, because there are more cars being put on the street every year, and there's not any increase in capacity. So it's inevitable that congestion will increase, even though we've added a lane of capacity in each direction. But there are a lot of good things that came out of that, and I really appreciate I felt the pain. I wouldn't have been as patient as this neighborhood, because Sherman Oaks covers both sides of the 405 on this side of the hill. I would not have been as patient as some of the residents were during this period. It was a horrendous project. It was a public works project from hell, and it should never be repeated. I think a lot of lessons were learned. I hope they're taken to heart. And
one more from Harlan Peterson. Harlan had a couple of questions, one of them about the Department of Child and Family Services, particularly with regard to foster child care. Has enough been done in terms of improvements, and how so?
Well, I had an interview today with Pat Morrison, the LA Times, and she asked me the same question. And it's a question I've asked myself 1,000 times, because nothing infuriates me more than to see a child suffer. I don't care who it is. When a child is crying in the emergency room and I'm waiting to get my sprained finger fixed, it pains me. And when a child is beaten by a coked up parent or guardian, it infuriates me. And when a child is killed by some deranged parent or guardian, it's the worst thing you can imagine. And I think we all feel that way. We can, and until there is not a single child death and a single child beating in our society, I won't be satisfied. However, any politician or any judge or any advocate who stands up and tells you that we can end all violence and raise your expectation level that high and you expect that it'll be done, don't believe them. Because this society is full of crazy people. Okay, and they're in every community and in every demographic. In this community, you've got them too. They just are able to hide it better. But in the poorer communities, they get caught, they get nailed, and they can't buy their way out of a situation. There's always going to be, as long as we have drugs infesting households in this town, and as long as we have deranged people who are sick, literally and figuratively, there are going to be kids who are abused. The county will never be able to be in every home of the 30,000 people 24/7. So we go there once a week or once a month, check it out. The other 29 days or the other 6 days, we're not there. And so I feel for our social workers, some of whom have erred, there's no question about it, but most of whom are very dedicated people. And they do, in my opinion, the hardest job in government is to go into homes, and I've done it. I've gone on ride-alongs with our social workers. And you go into homes that are pigsties. I went into one here in the San Fernando Valley. I'll never forget it as long as I live. There were 4 or 5 cats living in the house. There were cat feces all over the house. There was a young man, about 15 or 16 years old, who had no teeth left because whoever was taking care of him, his mother or his guardian, I think it was his mother, never took him to a dentist. This kid should have been yanked from that mother and put in foster care if it wasn't too late. And he was walking around in the house barefoot. So the social worker that day recommended that they stay with the mother. Well, I wasn't going to get in the middle of that discussion. I'm not in the chain of command. But I said to my child welfare deputy, who is an expert in this field, as we were leaving, I said, I don't want to second guess anybody, but common sense tells me this kid shouldn't stay with that mother. Something's wrong. It was obvious. And so we called the supervisor back at headquarters in Chatsworth. I honestly don't know whatever happened to that kid, but one thing I know is we sometimes make bad judgments. Our people sometimes make bad judgments. But for the most part, they make good judgments. But the fact of the matter is that just because I abuse my child and I don't do it in the presence of a social worker doesn't mean that the whole social welfare, child welfare system is run amok. But every time there is a child death, you'll read about it on the front page of the paper. For number one, I'm sure the editor of the paper feels the same way that the rest of us do, that when a child suffers, it's outrageous, and it is. And to the extent that we can shine a light on it, maybe we can save a life or 2 or 10 or 100. We don't have 100 children dying a year, but this is not unique to LA. It's going on in every metropolitan area across the country. So I just say to you, as I leave, I have no reason to say anything but what's on my mind, is if your expectation is that success is measured by 0 child abuse cases, forget about it. Because child abuse isn't perpetrated by the child welfare department. It's perpetrated by crazy, sick people. And period, over and out. To the extent we can reduce and mitigate the probability that these situations will occur, that's our job. That's what you depend on us to do. So I would just say, bluntly, that yes, watch what the county is doing. Yes, watch what the child welfare system, how it's faring. But also look at your own households. Look at your children's households. See how your relatives and your friends are treating their kids. You'd be surprised what you'll see if you open your eyes when you travel around in family circles, even in Sherman Oaks. This is the sickest thing I've ever seen. I tell you, nothing brings tears to my eyes. But when a child suffers, I can't stop the tears. These children have done nothing to warrant this kind of treatment from their parents, their guardians, the sexual abuse, the exploitation, the child prostitution. This is not just isolated cases. We have 30,000 kids in our child welfare system, yeah, but there are thousands of teenagers and young women, young girls who are being trafficked in prostitution right here in this valley, right here in this county. There's a lot going on, and we just don't talk about it enough. And I credit the networks, the TV stations, and the papers that shine a light on it. But you know, we can't, Dave, we cannot keep hiring and firing people who run our Department of Child Welfare every time there's a bad story in the front page of the paper. I mean, I'll tell you that we could not find anybody who would take the job last time it became vacant. Nobody wants a job, and it pays quite well. And it's not a political job, and it's not a soapbox job. It's not a place where you stand up and you pound your fist and say, this is terrible. You gotta hire the best child welfare director in the country, if we can hire him or her, and then let him or her do his job, and not have the members of the Board of Supervisors micromanaging every 5 minutes of what this guy is doing. We have a very good person in that job right now. He has not been permitted to do his job, in my opinion. Phil Browning. Phil came from Washington, where he turned one of their welfare departments around. We hired him here to turn our child support department around, our most troubled department. He did in a year. We then made him our welfare director, where he did a great job. And then I convinced him to take the job of director of Children and Family Services, because I thought he could turn it around. And the board appointed him, and then wouldn't let him do his job. And he's been fighting it. You know, I doubt if he's going to stay in this job. He doesn't need the job. He's at retirement age, long since could have retired. Anyway, I'm getting beyond it, but yeah, this is a terrible situation. It's a social problem, it's a societal problem, and you can't just depend on the government to fix it. We are not in everybody's bedroom 24/7.
Thank you very much. I think we can all agree that you certainly still have a fire on the belly. You need retirement from the board.
If I could just say one word before we go on. First of all, I want to thank Dave Bryan for doing this.